you said doesn't solve the housing crisis. So not only does it, I just want to confirm my understanding is it doesn't catch us up to where we need to be, right? Like this is the first, my understanding is this is the first tranche of many very large tranches of housing allocations that are expected over the next multiple housing elements to catch us up to a place as a state. Is that fair?
I think that's probably a fairer judgment of the future than other judgments of the future. Yes, although it's always hard to predict the future.
Right. Okay. But even if we were to, if the economy collapses, we still have a housing crisis and a need for housing. Even if jobs go away, we still have pushed people out into to live in Tracy and commute in, and we should be having those folks live here with us. I just wanted to, I think you kind of answered this, but again, just clarified what I heard, which is there is no state requirement for a city to provide a 30 unit per acre multifamily housing overlay. That's a discretionary action that a city can take, but there are other actions we can take to meet that same need for affordable housing. Expensive actions, but other actions.
That's right. It's one option that the city in its discretion can use that's provided under state law to illustrate how you're accommodating the lower income categories in your
and stipulating, agreeing with your concept that they're not going to believe that just building housing is going to be affordable in the Bay Area. We're not going to make that case. That would not be a good use. But the other one, which is we could fund the affordable housing, which is where the 30 units to the acre issue comes in, is not a violation of our charter.
No, not that I know of. No, okay. The charter says no multifamily housing, no residential densities over 21 units the acre. State says if you allow multifamily and you allow 30 units the acre, we'll give you a pass on that.
Yes, so we can meet the housing element without charter violations. And then the last question is, because we're gonna you've done a great job of identifying at least the low-hanging fruit, 2,100 units to the acre. Even if we put a 30 unit to the acre multifamily overlay, that still gets us somewhere near 3,000 and still almost 2,000 units short of our current allocation. If we start, let's say we drop a 30 units to the acre down Park Street, we're not going to be able to say that all those lots on Park Street are available. We might be able to say 5% of them are or something like that. And so we could drop multifamily overlays over the entire city and make that case. But I guess my point is like, we're not going to be, we aren't going to be able to perfectly spot zone unless we have actual available land. And the next step is going to be that we're going to have to start zoning very wide swaths of the island, large, entire areas of residential, if we wanted to use the multifamily overlay to try to meet of 30 units to the acre.
Yeah, I think there's really we have to be thinking about sort of two goalposts. One is the immediate one in 18 months, which is we need to get a housing element that HCD will say, you know what, you've crossed the finish line, good job. You've shown us available sites. And I think if you think about Park Street, like rezoning Park Street for multifamily housing with multifamily overlay, great, we could do that. The question is, what is the realistic capacity? That's the second question that HCD will ask. Well, what's the realistic capacity? Because it looks fully developed to us. Like, where do you think this new housing is going to go? Why would Tucker's ice cream go away? Like what makes you think somebody's going to build housing there? So I think we would have to combine it with some type of legwork that we do with the business association and all their members. Like, who on this corridor is interested in building housing over the next 8 years? Because we would like you to step up and, can we tell HCD that your site might be available? CVS is one that jumps to mind in my mind, right across from City Hall. Like, that's an ideal site. We have some sites down on Lower Park Street. So we might have to rezone, but it still is to our benefit to rezone the whole corridor, even if to cover properties that are not identified as available. So we tell HCD, like, we think we have available, we're doing the whole corridor, but we think we can get 200 units over the next 8 years because these 5 property owners step forward. But remember, we have to report to the state every year. And this is the other part of state law that's also tightened up. Like, every year we have to report. So we're constantly getting adjusted and or tracking our progress. So if somebody comes along after the housing element is adopted and builds an extra 20 units on a site we didn't imagine, because we put an MF overlay, That's gonna help us in the housing element process, not necessarily at certification, but 2 years later. And that's going to be very important. So the idea of doing zones with MF overlay, even if we don't, as opposed to just like we did 8 years ago, where, Ron Good Toyota, just a teeny little site, got an MF overlay for 10 units. Like we may not take that approach.
Right. And so if we can't find enough land to put the MF overlay over and get to 4,900, once we've gone to an MF overlay of 30 units, we're violating the charter. There's no reason we couldn't look at just doing an MF overlay of 60 or 120 units in key places. No. Because we might decide that actually, we've heard traffic is a major concern, and it would be better to build housing on Park and Webster Street and not build a whole bunch of single family ranch homes across all of the rest of Alameda Point, which is probably what we would have to do to be compliant with our charter and build the housing we have to build.
I agree. I think, we've sort of been thinking about this. The shopping centers are a great example. Like, it would be useful to sort of just talk about the shopping centers as a group. Like, which shopping centers do we want to sort of target? Let's pick 2 or 3. Then let's go talk to those property owners. Then let's talk about to them, how many units do you think you could actually do if you wanted to do it? Let's say it's a 10-acre site, and they say, I could do 1,000 units. All right, well, that's 100 units to the acre. We need 1,000 units on your site. So we'll put an MF overlay on your site that says your zoning is 100 units to the acre, because we're trying to get 1,000 units on your 10 acres. That's our goal. That's what we want to do. So, 30 acres a unit, 30 units to the acre versus 100 units to the acre is, in my book, just as much of a violation. I mean, the charter says 21.
Right.
30
okay.
Or 100, they're both not 21.
And how we get to 4,900 at that point probably doesn't
well,
matter.
I think, do you have the land to get to 4,900? Absolutely. The question is, which land do you want to use, and how dense do you want to build on each of those properties?
Right. Okay, so thank you for that. That was all very helpful.